Well, hey friends, this is Jennifer, and this is the Jennifer Allwood Show, the podcast for women who want to find freedom in both their life and in their business. I own a multi-7-figure-a-year coaching business. I'm also a certified life coach. So I have the honor of helping thousands of women every single month make money in the online space and help them to get unstuck from whatever is holding them back, all without sacrificing their faith or their family. In this show, you're going to get the very best life and business advice, always with a healthy dose of Jesus. So buckle in, my friend. I'm so excited that you are here. Hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. This is Jennifer. This is the Jennifer Allwood Show, and this is going to be a really different episode today. So I'm going to be talking today about like emergency preparedness or emergency planning or whatever else that you want to call it. And the reason I'm doing this podcast is because if you follow me on Instagram, a few weeks ago, Jason and I had received a delivery of food supply. It's like, emergency preparedness, food that comes dried and is in kits, et cetera. And you know how when you get like deliveries of things, sometimes it notifies you to your home screen on your phone. And I had taken a screenshot of that and posted it on my Instagram stories. And I was really surprised at how many of you were super interested in that. And so then I asked, a couple of you guys a couple of different times on my stories, would you be interested in me doing a podcast in terms of like what Jason and I have been doing to prepare for whatever could potentially happen in the world? And you guys were like, yes. And so I want you to know that I'm a little bit nervous actually about doing this podcast simply because there will be some of you who think you are a lunatic. And you know what? That's fine. Like no need to send me a DM and let me know how much you disagree with me. There will be others of you who are like, that's something I never actually thought of. And it just might plant a seed for you. There will be some of you who are so far ahead of where Jason and I are in terms of becoming self-sufficient in the world as we know it. And so, I'm just going to share with you what we are doing, why we're doing it, and you can take with this information and do whatever you want with it. My hope is that I'm not planting seeds of fear, but I'm planting seeds of hope, and that I'm also just really making it super clear that this is one of the reasons that I do what I do is so that we can have freedom. I mean, anytime you are in one of my courses, you listen to my podcast, you know that I talk all the time about freedom in your time and freedom in your finances. Freedom is a really important thing to me. And always has been and always will be. I believe part of that is the way I was raised. I think, some of that is, the fact that I've been on my own for a long time. I think that, there's just a whole lot of dynamics there, but I don't want to have to rely or be dependent on anyone for anything. Should the world get weirder than what it is now? And in case you are not someone who reads the Bible, I just want to go ahead and tell you, the world is going to get weirder than what it is right now. Okay. I mean, I don't think that's any like breaking news. So I just want you to know that. And so I know that this podcast is not for everyone. But the Bible says for he who has ears, like, let him hear it. And by the way, for those of you who are like, oh my gosh, Jennifer and Jason, I never took them for preppers. I don't know that we're prepping. I think we're preparing. Okay. And, there's times when our children are like, and this is not, by the way, a huge part of our life. And this is something that's taken us a lot of years, but there'll be times our kids are like, what are we buying all this stuff for? What is all this stuff in our basement? And I jokingly will just say to them, I don't know, the zombie apocalypse. Now, let me just also say before I really get into the meat and potatoes here that I don't actually believe in zombies. Okay. But the zombie apocalypse is kind of like the funny, but not so funny blanket term in our household for who knows what could happen. And the reason I think that we can just say, who knows what can happen is because so much has happened in the last couple of years that I never, ever, ever, ever would have seen coming. I mean, anybody else? Is it just me? And so, there's a lot of reasons that Jason and I are preparing our home, our children, our household, our finances, all of the things. The world is supposed to get weirder before Jesus' return. And there's been so many things that have happened if you are somebody that watches the news, which by the way, I don't. But you can get your news from a lot of other places than the television. But, I remember a couple of years ago when Dallas, Texas, had a freeze. And do you guys remember that? And the reason it was, kind of something that stuck in my mind is because Jason and I had just received an estimate for redoing our pool. We are going to have it, and we're still having it done. It's going to just be reshaped. We need a new liner, et cetera. Well, the freeze that happened in Dallas, which was very unexpected in the Texas weather, it messed a whole lot of things up, including the pool liner industry. There was just a whole lot of things that went sideways in the pool industry overall because so many people's pools in Texas, were ruined by that freeze. And I remember thinking then, okay, this is not normal that we have this sort of weather in Dallas. And that's when I think that I really started looking into weather modification. And I'm not researching, to a crazy degree, but I am looking at things and just thinking, wow, there's some weird stuff happening. It's when I really started paying more attention to the skies and are we being sprayed? I don't know. This is when I really started paying attention to 5G towers, and just kind of making note of different things. A few months ago, our friend Samantha and her husband, who live out on an acreage, they lost electricity just for your average thunderstorm that happened in Kansas City at the beginning of summer. And they were without electricity for 48 hours. Now, in that 48 hours time, they're like us with a house full of children who tend to like to eat. So, the refrigerator is open and closed and people are going in and out and the dogs still need let in and out. So the electricity caused losing it for 40 hours, a bunch of other issues. They were losing food and all these other things. And, that has added to Jason and I thinking, okay, we've got to be even more prepared. Now, when you hear the stories and see the reports of the farmers in the Netherlands who are having land taken away from them, when you see the warnings that come up on different news sources, online, Twitter, wherever, of electricity grids being overwhelmed, when you hear of food shortage warnings. And by the way, if you have not been to your local grocery store lately, go. Look with your own eyes. I saw a tweet recently that said the world is still living on last year's harvest. And that scared me. I'm not going to lie, because that's the truth. If you think we have a food shortage today, in case you don't know, the harvest this year is going to be very different. Russia and the Ukraine are responsible for 1/3 of the grain that supplies the entire world. And Russia's had a horrible harvest this year. I come from, my grandparents on both sides of my families were farmers. I still have family members who are still farmers. I pay attention to the farmland around Kansas City. And so, I've got some more thoughts on that. But, and then I talked to my Instagram stories recently too about the TV commercials that are happening in New York City on what to do in case of a nuclear bomb. And if you're like, Jen, that didn't happen. Okay, literally Jimmy Fallon covered it. Okay, so then it's true. No, there were TV commercials. There have been signs up because some of you have sent them to me from your gym in New York City that is now what to do in case of a nuclear bomb. Why are we suddenly seeing that? One of you who follow me on Instagram, who is in Seabrook, New Hampshire, sent me information about how last month you had an accidental nuclear alert in your town. Your entire town was alerted. There were alarms going off. It was on your phones. Everybody's being buzzed, dinged, whatever. And an hour later, you were told, that it was a false alarm. But what is happening? I don't know. And so here's what I do know. I know I want to be prepared for anything, and I don't want to be dependent on people to help our family. Should that be the case? I also know, I think that us believers, people who are, considering themselves Christians, we should be the help. We are going to need to be the answer in days and weeks and months and years to come for the rest of the world who don't know Jesus. We're going to need to be the answer to a world that's got a lot of problems. And in order to do that, we have to be prepared. So the Bible says that my people perish for lack of a plan. Also in other versions, it says my lack of knowledge. And so, when you know better, you can do a little bit better. So I'm going to just tell you some things that I know today, some things that we've done, and we'll see if it helps. I am not worried. I want you to know that Jason and I are not sitting over here wringing our hands over the state of the world. We're not prophesying over the world that we're going to heck in a handbasket. We're not, believing that Jesus' return is soon. what's soon on God's timeline, first of all, right? The Bible says that none of us will know the hour or the date. So, but we are saying that we are trying to be ready. And the Bible does call for us to do that, to be prepared in season and out. And so we are trying to just be prepared. Okay. I want to mention one other thing, and then I'll get to all the details, but I think that there are some people who are more wired, perhaps like myself, who have a real basic need for safety on this side of heaven. And it makes me sleep well at night to know that I can't be laid off from my job tomorrow. I own my own business. That makes me feel safe. It makes me feel safe to have money in the bank. It makes me feel safe to know we don't have, all this debt looming over our heads. It makes me feel safe to know that we've taken some of these precautions, because it makes me feel like we're taking care of our immediate family. We'll be able to take care of our extended family and other family. And so I have a real need for safety. And so if that's you too, you're going to really enjoy this podcast. And some of you are going to want to grab a pen and a paper. I'm going to be giving like some places where you're able to kind of research and look at some of the resources that I give you. But the truth of the matter is things are just getting weirder, and it's not going to get any more normal, I don't think, from here on out. So some of you are my age. You might remember the whole Y2K and was the world going to end and all those things. And, I think that we were much, much younger then. I'm at the time you hear this podcast, I will be 51. But I remember when the kids were little is when we started, Jason and I, thinking about what would we do if there was ever a huge emergency? And part of that had happened because there were some things like earthquakes happening in the world. By the way, we're in Missouri where there are a lot of fault lines. Nobody ever thinks about that in Missouri, but there are earthquakes. We have felt an earthquake in Missouri. Jason and I were laying in bed one Saturday morning. I'll never forget it. And I was like, what on earth was that? But you just never know what's going to happen. And so when the kids were little, we packed what we called a bug out bag. We had a friend that told us that that's what they called it. And it was a bag that it had bottled water, it had cash, it had sneakers for everybody in the house. It was also really hard to keep those sneakers accurate in the sizing, but we just kept it in a place in the basement where if we ever needed to bug out for any reason, it would be there. Not a big deal, right? And I remember probably about 7 or 8 years ago, no, it would have been longer than that, probably 8 to 10 years ago, I painted for a client here in Kansas City who was from Chicago. They owned a very, very large box company that prepares boxes for some of the largest companies in the world. And they owned homes in a couple other places in the United States, but they built a home in a rural part of Kansas City in a small town that's very close to here. And I won't give the name of the town just to protect their identity, but it's a good 30 minutes from where I live. But we were chosen to do the decorative painting in this home for them. Well, the home from the outside, from the road, looked like a Morton building. And if you don't know what that is, it's like, just imagine a fancy metal barn. That's what a Morton building looks like. Something that people would park maybe their tractors in or something. The truth of the matter is that from the road, which was a good probably quarter of a mile away, their house was from the main road. From the road, it looked like just a Morton building. But once you pulled up onto their lane and it's, out in the country and came around to the front of that, you realized, oh, this is actually a house. And I remember these people, they were building the home when we were working in it. And I can remember thinking, okay, these people are a little bit crazy because they had 2 ponds on their property that they put in and they were stocking them with fish. They were planting pecan trees and other fruit trees that could make it in the Missouri winters. I remember at the top of like one of their rooms, they built like a lookout area. They had a bunker. And I just remember thinking, are these people preppers? Oh my goodness. And now I'm thinking, okay, those people, and the house was big enough for all of their children and grandchildren. And it was within driving distance of the major city that they live in. And now I'm like, you know what? Those people were just probably a decade or 2 ahead of, a lot of us kind of catching up with preparedness. So, the truth of the matter is that I don't have a lot of trust in our government wanting the very best for us. And that doesn't matter, by the way, who's in charge in the government. Okay. It doesn't matter which side is running the country. I don't have a lot of trust in that the last couple of years that they have been making decisions that were actually good for us as people. I don't think that in what they were trying to position as attempts to help us in our physical health, I don't think that they even took into consideration what it was doing to a lot of mental health, what it was doing to people's jobs, losing their income, what was happening in terms of, addiction to drugs going through the roof, abuse cases going up. There was a whole slew of problems that has happened in the last couple of years. And because of masks, because of, mandates, because of people losing their job over not wanting to get vaccinated, et cetera. And so, now when I hear them talking about masking up again, in parts of the country, I'm like, first of all, no, Lord, fix it. Okay. So there's that. But two, I'm like, I don't know, how our country would be able to handle another lockdown. We, by the way, will not be participating in that one. We only did for a few weeks on the first one, let's be honest. But, and now we have all these conversations and articles about monkeypox, and they're talking about a monkeypox outbreak in Florida where our second home is, and, more vaccinations, whatever. And so saying that all to say, things are getting weirder. And you need to get your house in order. And we've been trying to get our house in order. For some of you who are entrepreneurs, I just want you to know that you have the ability to take the God-given gifts that you have and turn those into resources that can bless not only you, but other people. The Bible does say that a man that does not take care of his own family is worse than an unbeliever. Another version of that Bible scripture says that the man who, or the person or whatever, if anyone does not provide for their own family, he's worse than a heathen. And so I just want you to remember that. It makes me so angry. And I did an Instagram reel the other day when women are like, oh, I just want to make enough for just me, and my family and just have a little bit extra. And I'm like, knock it off. That is so self-centered. It is so pathetic to say, I don't care about anybody else, but just me, my four and no more. No, listen, women, listen, entrepreneurs, listen, believers, we have the ability to really help and to help take care of people. And through that, I believe win people over to Christ, to have people in heaven with us, but it's going to take resources to do so. So if you're an entrepreneur, listen to this. I just want you to know, high five. The book of James talks about pure religion is to look out for widows and orphans in their times of distress. Well, how are we going to take care of widows and orphans? How are we going to take care of anybody other than ourselves if we don't have financial resources? So keep making your money, entrepreneurs. And then here's some of the things that you can do. Okay. All right. So, Jason and I, over the last couple of years, we have been really working, and this did not happen all at once, but to really kind of, just prepare ourselves in a lot of different areas. So one is in the area of food. Our food supply chain is so fragile in this country, you guys. It's so fragile. And right now we have droughts everywhere. I got a tweet this morning from, the governor of Missouri that we are now in a drought. And so there are lots of things that are hurting our supply chain. And, and then there was things like a couple of years ago that were hurting the supply chain with, all the barges that were stuck off of the different, the coasts and things. But, now it's climate change, or, I say that in air quotes because I don't know actually what I think about that. But we have droughts, we have cows that are dropping over dead. Jason's background is in the food industry. And I want you to know that there are some issues happening with the food industry. And like I told you, we right now are living off of last year's harvest when it comes to food, which means that because other parts of the world are having problems with their food supply chain as well, there's going to be issues with food. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean famines, but that just here in the United States, I think it will mean absolutely ridiculous prices. I also meant to look up statistic of, food manufacturers. Hang on. I'll see if I can even see it. With fires, we have had so many fires in food factories. We've had food processing plants are catching fire. They are blowing up. There's been 18 at the end of April. And there's been several more since then. How do you have 18 different food processing plants burned down in the last several months? It's just, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at that and go, uh-oh, something's not right here. So Jason and I we've been working on food storage. And so if you also look at things that are out like baby formula and, there was a toilet paper shortage at the beginning of the pandemic, weird things like if you tried ordering onion rings at a restaurant in the last 6 months, what about Lunchables, boxed Lunchables? Weird things are out, right? And so again, I told you guys that Ukraine and Russia, they supply a third of the world's grain. The cost of gas is really hurting the farmers here in the United States. Because have you noticed lately, have you paid attention, and perhaps this is just because my grandparents were farmers, but have you noticed any fields that are close to where you live that normally have beans or corn in them? And this year there was nothing in them. They were empty. We have noticed empty fields on our way to church. The route that Jason and I like to bike has got some empty fields. Listen, if the farmers are not able to make money, because that is a business. Farming turns out is supposed to be for profit. Then why would they even plant a field, right? And when the cost of gas is so outrageous, and also there are some things going on in other parts of the farming industry, they're trying to put more restrictions around different things. So there's people just literally are not planting right now, which we will pay for next year. We will pay for that next year. So we are just trying to do pick up additional dried cans of food when we're at the grocery store. We always have a freezer. We always have in our house with a side of beef. Jason was talking last week about buying pork to put in there. I know a friend of mine who her husband just went fishing in Alaska, brought back 100 pounds of fish. And so, whatever kind of food works for you, that's what I would do. But we recently just got food storage from a company called Patriot Supply. That's who did the notification on my phone that many of you asked about. And so you can buy a 3-month food supply from them. You can buy a 6-month food supply from them. If you literally just Google Jennifer Allwood Amazon store, I have links to a ton of this stuff. I have, there's a folder I made for you called Emergency Preparedness. And so you can find some of those emergency food kits there. My Patriot Supply or Amazon for the food on there, either one will work just fine. But you can get a 6-month emergency food supply. Does it look very tasty? Heck to the no. Is it better than starving to death or paying ridiculous prices? Absolutely yes. Last week, for the first time in our life, Jason and I bought a ton of sweet corn. We had our friend Tim pick it up for us, and we froze sweet corn. And so there's that. So there's some other things, that obviously are out or have been out at other times that I want you to think of some of the things that are like necessities. So things like toilet paper. I can remember my grandmother she went through the Great Depression. So she had that kind of as her, compass. And she would push big containers, packages full of toilet paper in between the rafters in the unfinished part of the basement. And I remember I used to think she is crazy, but it's because she remembers being out of toilet paper at times. And so I am always asking Jason just to pick up more toilet paper when he's at the grocery store, because there was a tampon shortage. There's plenty of women that are switching to things like Diva cups. So you don't have to worry about that. By the way, tampons are not good for you anyhow. I said what I said, unless they're natural, etc. And so just start thinking about how you can just grab a little extra when you are at the store. And by the way, if you're making more in your business, it's easier to do that. So for those of you who are like, oh gosh, I just don't have any motivation to get up and post on my Facebook page and sell anything right now. Well, get your big booty Judy up, because there are people that might need some resources, and you need to be spending double what you are right now at the grocery store. Okay. Another way that we are preparing is if our electricity was to go off, well, then that's super problematic if we have all this food, in a freezer, et cetera. So we recently got 2 generators, and that's something that's been on our list of things to get for a while. Now, I will tell you, getting a whole house generator for us was ridiculously expensive. It's one that they actually wire and all the things, and it was like $24,000. So we got 2 generators. I believe it's off of Home Depot. I can ask Jason to put the one that we got into our Amazon store, just so that you can see that. I'm going to make a note of it right now. Literally writing this down. Generator, Amazon store, Jennifer Allwood. Got it. Okay. I'll add those in there just so you can see the 2 that we got. And that would at least help us, if the electricity was off, like it was for my friend Samantha, for any extended amount of time, that we would be able to keep our food frozen, et cetera. So, some other things that you will see in my emergency preparedness Amazon store. I have purchased things in the last few years, like rechargeable light bulbs. So when Dallas was without, electricity a couple of years ago, most people were in the dark. So we have at our house tons of candles, but I also bought rechargeable light bulbs. They're on Amazon. You can find them in my Amazon store. We also bought cell phone chargers. We bought two different kinds. One is solar and one cranks. And the reason we did two is because if weather modification is actually happening, and I believe that it is, I don't want to buy things that are solely dependent on solar. So we also bought an old-fashioned crank cell phone charger. Yes, we did. Now, if you're like, Jen, why would you do that? Because what if like all of the cell phones go down? What if all, nobody can call each other? Okay, so our family has had a plan since our children were little. Okay, family, if in fact the zombie apocalypse happens, remember that's just if anything happens, it's weird. We've always had a meetup place that I'm obviously not going to share with you, but we've had an emergency meetup place for our family. One of the things that we have done just recently is I have purchased a good old fashioned map from Amazon of the United States. It's also in my Amazon store. Just that our kids that are able to drive keep in their glove box. Now, I know you're going to think I'm crazy. I don't care. I don't care that you think I'm crazy. If I have my son Easton at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix and all of the airlines shut down again and there is no cell phone availability, so he can't get on, Google Maps, there's no way he could find his way from Phoenix back to Kansas City. It's a 2-day drive. And by the way, I couldn't find my way from Kansas City to him. I would have no idea where to even start, what highway to do it on. So we all have maps in our car, the good old fashioned kind, baby, the kind that we used to use 30 years ago. Some of you are going to be like, this is ancient. That's okay. Listen, in a pinch, this is going to help. Our family also has cellular radios that we can talk back and forth on. Imagine just a walkie-talkie that goes a long ways. And will we ever need them? I hope not. I hope we don't need any of this stuff, but I know we're prepared in case we ever do. Okay. So let's talk about something else that I think you would be wise to stock up on, and that is medication. So let me just say this. There is good medicine that keeps a lot of people feeling very healthy, and it's very necessary. And so that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about medication. I'm not talking about other things that are unnecessary, that are actually making people sick, that are actually making them sicker. Did you know that it was back in 2014 that there was actually a study done that prescription drugs, so not street drugs, but prescription drugs were the fourth leading cause of death in the United States. Fourth leading. All right. And so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the medication that you actually need. I use things like, I am prone to cold sores. So I have, a pill that I take when I have a cold sore coming. Is it a necessity? No. But Jason and I were in Mexico a little over a year ago. And whenever we travel to some place like Mexico, we stock up on medication. We just do. Our pharmaceutical companies, our pharmaceutical industry in the United States is an absolute mess, friends. It just is. You can arm wrestle me over it. I don't care. Big Pharma is a mess because it generates money. And so what I can get in Mexico for $17 is, $120 here. What I can get down there without a prescription, I have to jump through so many hoops in the United States. Why, if I've had cold sores since I was 5 years old, do I still have to go to a doctor's appointment to get a prescription to get that prescription refilled for that cold sore? It makes no sense, right? You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Big Pharma's a mess. If you really want to get into some biblical things, there are a lot of good pharmacists out there. Let me just say that. And thank God for good doctors and good pharmacists. Thank you, Jesus, for that. I'll also just tell you there's some interesting things. Like if you look up the sign for a pharmacy, there's a snake on it. And pharmacia is the shortened word of pharmacy. And that means sorcery in some languages. And so because there's so much money in the pharmaceutical industry, people are written prescriptions constantly and pushed to put things in their body that they don't want to, and all these things because it's a moneymaker. Okay. So if ever you have the opportunity and you are in a place like Mexico, where you can get things that would be a blessing to your family or to anybody else in a time of need, please do that. Get as much as possible. When COVID first started, we bought everything that we could that could help to lessen the, what do I want to say? All of the things that was, the different symptoms that people were having when they had COVID, and brought it back. We brought back medication for a friend of ours who a lot of times has like chronic UTIs. We brought back things that other friends requested from us because their pharmaceutical industry is way different. And so if you have a potential trip coming up, if you are in a place where you can get things, I would. Maybe you'll never need it. But if you have a business or extra money that allows you, like, wouldn't you rather have things on hand and never need it than get in a pinch and just feel like you have no options? I don't like that. Remember, I'm a girl that likes freedom. I like to have options. So, we got all of the things that we had heard could help with COVID when we were in Mexico. By the way, when we both got COVID, I didn't realize that that's what it was until I was on I started coming down with it on a Wednesday. And it was on Sunday, I finally realized, I thought COVID was going to be respiratory. The kind of COVID I had was all like achiness, fever, lost my taste, lost my smell, all the things. So I went from Wednesday to Sunday. So that's to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it was 4 days later that I finally started the medication we had gotten in Mexico. My husband started it on day one. He was totally 100% back to being fine in way less time than I was. His lasted like 5 days less because he started, I believe, everything quicker than what I did. So another thing that we have purchased, and again, you can think that I'm an absolute lunatic. It is okay, but we have gotten the potassium iodine pills that you can find in my Amazon store. Those are what a lot of people who live near or work in nuclear plants keep on hand in order to protect their bodies, their thyroid, from the effects of inhaled radiation. Didn't even occur to me that we would need anything like this until New York started putting out those commercials last week or the week before. And then that lady in New Hampshire that follows me, they had a nuclear bomb. Oops. I mean, what kind of an oops is that? And so we got potassium iodine pills. We have not gone as far as, getting masks or anything like that. Jason, I think, had a really good point. If we are ever, in a nuclear war, do we actually want to live through that? Or is it our time just to go be with Jesus? And I completely agree with him on that. So do your due diligence, but that is what I have to say about that. All right. So 2 years ago when Texas froze, it really showed me, you know what, we need water storage, because I can remember watching some different people on social media. How many of you were watching the stories of different people on Instagram during that time? And you were like, holy crap. I can remember watching Heather Rest, and she wasn't able to flush the toilets in her home. The only way she was able to give her children baths and things was because she had water storage. So we purchased water storage off of Amazon. Again, if you Google Jennifer Allwood Amazon store, it's in there. So we have all of these, big containers full of water in our basement. We also have purchased something to purify water. We have a swimming pool in our backyard. We live next to a pond with a stream. So if we ever needed to, we could hopefully clean the water. So that's on Amazon as well. So you just never know. You just literally never know. We take so many things for granted in this country, like running water, right? And the thought of like not having that, of pipes freezing or whatever it could be. Whatever it could be. How many of you have heard about towns that they're like, you know what, we need to back off the water usage for a while? And unless you are very self-sufficient and live out in the country next to a water source, which is another goal we have, then you do need water. Am I right? And so those are all things that we have invested in. In terms of my background, I come from a family of people who have served in the military. So my father, my stepfather, both of my brothers, all have been in the military. My best friend's husband and kids in the military right now. And I come from a family of public servants. So my stepfather retired from the police force 4 years ago. My stepbrother is still a police officer. We love our public servants. I want you to know that. We love our military. Okay. So with that being said, I'll also just say that my husband, he's an alpha male. And I love that about him. As a woman who really needs to feel safe, I would not worry for a moment if our home was ever, broken into or we were ever attacked. My husband, I have this complete faith, obviously in God, but my husband would take care of me and our children. He would lay down his life. He would make sure that somehow we came out okay. And as a woman who needs security, boy, that feels good. Okay. So with that also being said, I'm just going to say that my husband has made sure that he is able to defend his home and his family should that need arise. And if you live in a town like I do in Kansas City, where defunding the police has become a hot topic, can I just say that there's more and more lawlessness all the time. So yes, we have an incredible security system on our home, all the cameras, all the bells, all the whistles, all the things. Okay. But sometimes the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. That's it. And so we are well taken care of in that way. Now, listen, I am not super comfortable around guns. I like knowing, that we are safe. My kids are probably, more comfortable and have been trained more than I have. So I actually have a gun course coming up, a self-defense class that I'm taking with Ava in a few weeks. And then I also have just a private gun instruction so that I can get more comfortable handling a gun. And as lawlessness is more and more prevalent, it's going to be more and more comfortable that some of us women quit being so precious and learn how to also defend our families. And so, yeah, there's that. Now, on the same topic, I will just say that if we are ever in a time where the world has gone sideways and nobody's really sure what to do. And I do believe that there could be a time, I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime or not, where we need things to trade. And because there's a possibility that, cash will no longer be king. I mean, how many of you have been to places in the last 2 years where they only wanted cards, no cash, where they can't give back any change? I mean, you've seen all of these things happen. I'm not telling you anything you haven't happened, but you maybe have not been able to kind of connect all of the dots. So our husband has made sure that we have a lot of things on hand to both defend our family and to also barter and trade if needed. So that means cash on hand. That means gold and silver on hand. That means weapons. You take your pick. We probably have them. That means ammunition. There has been an ammunition shortage over and over again in this country. And so all of those things are things that our family has done so that we are able to defend ourselves, so that we are able to defend others, so that we are able to defend righteousness. And so there's that. Okay. So, we used to think our grandparents were crazy, right? For putting money under the mattress. Oh, our grandparents were so much smarter than what we've given them credit for. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I had a girlfriend go to a bank to pull out $5,000 worth of cash. She goes to the bank and says, I just want to take out $5,000 in cash just to have at home. And they said to her, we don't keep that much cash on hand. And she says, whoa, you're a bank. And they're like, yep, we don't keep that much cash on hand. And she was unable to pull out $5,000 in cash. Okay, listen, this is problematic. And so, there's some things that you can do, I think, and that we have done to be helpful. Okay. Number one, we keep some cash at home in a safe. All right. We have all of our money. We have some physically on hand. We also have things split up into, we own real estate. We own 2 houses here in Kansas City. We own 1 in Florida. We will be buying 1 in Scottsdale. We have money in the stock market, and we have split our cash up into separate banks. Because the FDIC only insures banks up to, I think it's $250,000. I don't know if it's a person or an account. The rules sometimes are kind of unclear. But we've just split things up between banks and credit unions. Only because it probably just makes me feel better. And who knows if it's actually needed or not, but I sleep better at night. I am firmly convinced that what God has given us on the side of heaven, to whom much is given, much will be required, right? And I do believe that to whom much is given, we are also required to steward it well, that we need to protect the things that we've been given to steward on this side of heaven. All right. So we'll leave that there. So I don't watch the news, by the way. I do believe that the news is corrupt. I think that it's on both sides. I don't care if you're watching Fox News or CNN. I really don't care either way. Because you can watch a story on CNN, flip it to Fox News, and it's the exact opposite from the exact opposite angle. And so I think it's all corrupt. I think the mountain of media needs cleaned out. If you don't know what the mountain of media is, I need you to go find a book. It's called The Seven Mountain, is it The Seven Mountain Prophecy? So we're all called to different mountains. I know I'm called to the mountain of family, which is probably why I feel the need to protect everybody, and the mountain of business, which is why I feel the need to teach. And so if you are somebody that's just, got your TV on every night, I encourage you to turn it off. I encourage you to pray. I encourage you to get your news from other sources. I encourage you to talk to people. I encourage you to ask the Lord to open your eyes to what you need to see, and to follow your gut. Okay. I would also suggest that you pay attention to the things that you're dreaming, I think it's in Acts 2 where it says in the last days, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Young men will see visions, and old men will dream dreams. And so I love that scripture. So if you're a woman who's listening to my podcast, I think I have like 2 guys that listen. Thank you guys. But if you're a woman listening to this and you have your husband or, a son or something is wanting to help you prepare for just the future or things at hand, like quit castrating them by saying no. Let them lead. If I believe that there are people that the Lord is sharing with them in dreams and through prophecy, like what we need to do to prepare. I also believe that we can look at certain movies and we can see how, the powers that be have been conditioning us for some time for the world to just be a really weird place. There's 2 movie series in particular that the Lord has had me watch over and over and over and over. And that is The Hunger Games, and that is Divergent. And I think that the Lord has had me watch those because it shows how separated we can become into different fractions or whatever you want to call it. Right now, you're either, pro-vax or no-vax. You're either pro-life or pro-choice. You're either this or you're that. It's like we are so divided. And so then you can kind of watch and learn how they turn on one another and how, sometimes the powers that be, they basically stir the pot to get the different sections of people even more divided. And the news, the way that they deliver them information is so that they are against each other. We tend to forget who the real enemy is, by the way. We don't fight against flesh and blood, is what the Bible says. We fight not against flesh and blood, but of the principalities and powers. That's who the fight is against. It's good versus evil. So, I think that we've been prepared in movie series for things to get weirder. I recently read a book called The Nightingale from Kristen Hanna. If you have not read that, I loved it. It's set in the time of World War II. It's a story of 2 different sisters and how they have to survive war. It's about really the resilience of the human spirit. And it made me just even want to prepare my family a little bit more because the truth is I'm not very domestic, friends. Jason does all of the cooking because all I really know how to do is run a microwave when we got married and do casseroles. And he was like, you know what? I'm actually really good at this. His mother left their family when he was 6th grade, and he's had to cook for himself and his father ever since then. So he's really good at it. I'm really bad at it. And I'm like, there's ways that I can still serve my family and help us to prepare. I want to tell you a couple of the things that I still want to do. Okay. So, one is I want to learn how to grow some of our own food. I have tried a garden before. I am horrible at a garden. So there are some other things that you can do if you too are horrible at a garden. Okay. So one of the things that you can do is you can do vertical gardening. Did you know that is a thing where you can literally have things on your deck where you can grow a garden up? There's something called hydroponic growing systems or hydroponic gardens. You can Google it. It's basically like indoor gardening. So you can do it in your basement with different types of lights and things. Amazon has some great things for you to do vertical gardening or different types of growing systems. But I would like to be able to grow some of our own food. Jason, I would still like to purchase land here in the Kansas City area that is at least 30 minutes to an hour outside of the Kansas City proper that has a water source on it. We have a realtor. She's been, watching for us for a year or 2. It's not a huge, emergency, for us to do, but a water source is That is that's like one of my things that I'm like, it has to have, it can't just be a pretty place. It has to have a source of water on it. Simply because if you're ever going to be able to sustain yourself, you've got to have a place to get water from. That's my personal thoughts. I am really glad, by the way, that we bought a home in Florida, and I'm a big Ron DeSantis fan, by the way, and you don't need to DM me about that either. But there are a lot more freedoms in Florida than what there are in Missouri right now, and there have been over the last couple of years. And for that, I'm very appreciative. I have a friend who has chickens. I wish we had chickens, but we don't have a farm that we can do that. I wish we had chickens so that we could have eggs every day. We need to stock up on firewood. I know right now before winter gets here. If you do not have like a fire pit, a way of burning things. Did you guys see, 2 years ago in Dallas, did you see some of the stories of people like taking the trim off of their doors to burn in their fireplace to keep their homes warm? I mean, they had a mess, you guys. They had an absolute mess, and we need to learn from some of that. So, the Bible talks about end time famine. It talks about, how the world is going to get crazier. And I believe that. All right. And so we are not preparing just for our family. You can also, in terms of like the rapture and things, you can be preparing for the people who get left behind. We may not have a famine, like I said, but we might just have crazy inflated prices. And so just know that this podcast was not to like scare anyone or anything like that. I just wanted to share what Jason and I have been doing. And I also just want to end here by kind of saying a couple of things. Yes, we believe that God will absolutely take care of us, but faith without works is dead. That's what the Bible says. So we can't just pray and never do. It's like those of you who ask God to bless your business, but then you never actually start your Instagram account or put anything up for sale. I mean, you got to do something. God's like, I'll bless it if you'll start it. It's like for those of you who are asking God for a spouse, but you haven't left your home in 2 years, you don't ever get online or do Christian Mingle or whatever they have now. You know what I'm saying? It's like when we ask God to protect our families, but then we treat our bodies horrible, or, it has to go both ways. So yes, we believe that God will take care of us. We also believe that we are to use our resources on this side of heaven, to make sure that we have a plan and that we make sure that we're in a position where we can help others. And so, the good news is we all know how the book ends, and we're not to fear. There's nothing to fear. The Bible says we're to occupy until Christ returns. That's what it says in the book of Luke. And so we don't need to fear, but we do need to have our house ready. So some of you can just start with some small things. Get a little bit of extra food, get a little bit of extra water, get a little bit of extra cash. Some of you've been thinking about starting a side hustle, a side business, and you haven't yet. Please do. Okay. Please do. Because if there's another lockdown in this country, I can only imagine what's going to happen to the small businesses in the United States again. Do you know, by the way, that since the pandemic, 40%, I heard this the other day, I think it was a podcast I was listening to. It was on Daystar, I think. And I think it was saying it was 40% of the churches in the United States have never opened back up. I don't know what the number is for businesses, but I'm sure that a ton of them have not. So, if you have some talents and you can be making some extra money to be preparing your family for the zombie apocalypse. Remember, that's just the funny blanket term because I don't actually believe in zombies. It will be funny, the DMs that I get. Please don't DM me hateful things about this. I told you at the very beginning of this podcast, this is not going to be for everybody. If it's not for you, just keep the train moving. There is no reason to come into my Instagram DMs and tell me that I'm crazy. We're not crazy. We're doing what we believe we are supposed to be doing right now. So when you go to the store, if you want, just grab a few extra cans of things, just put back some cash, just add a couple of things off of Amazon. Again, you can go to, just Google Jennifer Allwood Amazon store. I have a whole folder on emergency preparedness. And so just go look at that and grab a couple things off there. It's like when we finally were out of debt and I just slept better at night because if you are someone like me, again, who safety is really important to you, and you've been through some things in your life that make you not want to go through hard things again, but you feel like, but at least if I have done some things to prepare for hard things, even if the hard thing doesn't happen, at least I'll feel like I was ready if it did. It's kind of like insurance, right? I mean, who actually knows if any of us need the types of different insurances that we have until you need it? And then you're like, I'm so glad. And so all of this may just get on, just may get gifted to our children one day when Jason and I are dead and gone. Or maybe not. There may be a time when God calls on us to help people who are in need. So I hope that this was helpful for somebody today. If it was, I'd love it if you shared it on Instagram. Only if, you share it with the right heart and it's to help and not to scare. Only if it's, to support, not to mock. And so, yeah, thanks for listening. I hope that this was helpful. Send it to your friends if there's somebody who too is just, worried about where the world is headed. And again, we know how this ends, so we're not to fear and we're to occupy until Christ returns. So let's just do a really good job of making sure that we're prepared for whatever may be in store and that we do it with the right hearts. And if you are a business owner, for the love, quit playing so small. Keep figuring out ways to make more income, to make more revenue. It will be people who are entrepreneurs who come up with ways to help people if, in fact, the world goes sideways. It will be entrepreneurs who come up with the ideas and have the financial resources to put things into play, put things into practice to help. And so if that's you, if you've got those skills, we're counting on you. And thanks for listening today, guys. Until next week, have a good one. Bye-bye. Friend, thank you so much for listening to the podcast again this week. I'm so honored that you come back for every episode and that you share the Jennifer Allwood Show with your friends and family. Every time I see you guys post about it on Instagram or Facebook or something, it just makes me do a little happy. So thank you. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast if you never want to miss an episode. So you can go to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify or any of the other podcasting places and subscribe each week so that every week you get the new episode when it releases. So just know that I love bringing you relevant content. I love bringing you great guests. And one of the ways you can help us here at Team Allwood is by leaving the podcast a review. So if you have just a second to do that, would you go over and leave a review for the Jennifer Allwood Show? Thank you again. You're amazing. I'm honored to be here. Until next week. Bye-bye.